Okay, on to the last test of Cambridge 11. This reading one was pretty difficult, actually. I was surprised. There's some difficult language and vocabulary. The questions aren't very easy. True, false, not given. One of these match the statements, where they will paraphrase this like crazy, and a summary, but it's a summary with a box, and the summary with a box is usually a lot more difficult than summary without a box. Anyway, up to you, but I would start with the summary. So we need to find epigenetic processes, probably start scanning at the end. It's more likely this will be toward the end of the passage. So we're going to scan for epigenetic processes. Scan for what else? Internal, maybe, uncovering way. I'm looking for things that genes is possible, that they can't really paraphrase, and that's fantastic. A pregnant rat. You can't paraphrase rat. A rat is a rat, so we must find the rat. Newborn rat as well. Alright, so start scanning from here, I would say, and scan backwards. Now I do see epigenetics there, and I see it actually quite a lot. I don't see the rat. There it is. So that's great, but we want to see where this whole thing about epigenetics starts. And how will we know that? It's because they will probably give a definition. And that's pretty good. It could be a definition, but I'll just go a little bit back, and there, now that's how I know that this starts over here. Because they use this word called. They're introducing this new word. But we are looking at the processes, so it probably starts here. Anyway, let's quickly look at the grammar. Does the grammar help us with anything? There is one of these where the grammar really helps us. Can you see it? Pause the video. Take a look at these four and see where the grammar helps us. The grammar helps us with this one. Why? Because this verb has no S. That means, what does that mean? That means that this is a plural countable, which means that it ends in S. So that means that this answer can only be this one or this one. It cannot be that. Only two possibilities for that one. Check the others. That can be anything. It can, well, not anything. It can't be singular, but it can be countable, plural, or it can be uncountable. And actually the same for all three of these. They can all be countable, plural, or uncountable. So the grammar helps us with this one. It's either that or that. Let's go and find it. They influence the activity of our genes, for example, in creating our internal something. Epigenetic processes, what influence the activity of our genes? And we're looking for either something about our organs or chemicals, about organs or chemicals. Quite straightforward. These reactions influence our genes. So there it is over there, quite easy. So it's reactions. But they give you a reference pronoun there, these reactions. What are these reactions? They are the chemical reactions. So is it organs or is it chemicals? Of course it's chemicals. For example, in creating our internal something. I found this one very difficult because this whole thing is a big example. I thought it might be here, but the key was, and also there was no internal. So the key was actually in this word creating, and there it is over there. Bones, brains, all the other parts of our bodies, which include internal organs. Really, really difficult for somebody who didn't know what organs are. Organs are your heart, your lungs, your brain, your liver, all of those. So it was a really tough one. I think quite unfair for reading one. And the only thing that we had was creating. There was nothing about example. There was nothing about internal. Only building and creating gave us that. Also, so that one is, I've made a mistake. It's B, and this must be D. Please don't write the word. Right. Next, hopefully next one is easier. The study of epigenetic processes is uncovering in a way in which our genes can be affected by our what? Now what they've done here is, I think they've gone back. Here's genes, and the problem is there's genes over there as well. So they've gone back, which they sometimes do in the summary. Again, really difficult for a reading one. A bridge between the environment and our genes. How our genes are affected by our. So that's it over there, but really, really tough. I couldn't see, can you see anywhere else where they talk about genes? I guess there. So it was easy to get confused there. You had to really know what this is all about, and this whole thing about genes and the environment, it's kind of general knowledge that most people know. So they would know that the genes and the environment are related. Horrible. And then the pregnant rat suffers from stress. The newborn rat will later show problems in its. So we can delete those three. It's one of these three. If you read it, you can immediately see its behavior, but let's just confirm. If the rat experiences stress, changes in the fetus is the unborn baby that lead to behavioral problems as this is the rat, the rodent, grows up. So if the mother rat has stress during pregnancy, the baby rat will have behavioral problems as it grows up. So yes, that was that one over there. I think reasonably you can get 2 out of 4 there, and then maybe just get lucky with one of these 2, because it was really difficult. This one, there were very little keywords, and this one you had to go back, and there were lots of genes everywhere. Anyway, let's move on. I don't think it really matters if you do the true-false next or if you do this question next. Really up to you. I don't think there's advantages either way, but this is probably going to start at the beginning, so let's do the true-false. Alright, maybe pause the video. I'm going to just put circles around the target language and see if you can see what the target language is, and put circles around those words. Alright, this is what I thought IELTS will target. This one here, they're looking at the modal verb, the may, must, can, could, should. It's not very common, but I've seen IELTS do that with true, false, not given. They're testing your understanding of the modal verbs. This one is quite straightforward, I think. Is it a greater risk? It is a lower risk. That's the kind of more or less increase, decrease, quite common for true, false, not given. This one, I couldn't really see anything, so it's a question of, usually when it's like that, it's usually on the verb, did he or didn't he? Maybe they could have changed this. Did he advertise in newspapers? Did he advertise somewhere else on television? But it's not really clear. Often when it's not clear like that, it's a not given, so we'll see later. And this one, there were 2 possibilities. Are these different or the same, or we don't know? Or are they different from only one of them and the same as only one of them? So they could have targeted that word over there, the both. I've seen them do that before with both. Alright, so then, what's next? Scanning. I would go with skin, illnesses, maybe newspapers. Definitely, there's a name over here, Bouchard. Epigenetic process, we know where that is, so genetic and environmental. So we know where that is, that's at the end, so let's just start with the beginning. We're going to look for the skin. And we see it over here. Any differences? For example, if one has younger looking skin, must be due to environmental factors. There may or there might be genetic causes for the differences. But the text says no, this difference must be environmental. So you can't say it might be genetic. It's not genetic, it must be environmental. So they were testing your understanding of these modal verbs, may and must or might. So that's definitely false. You really probably should have just read this first paragraph. This whole thing is all about the influence of genes and the environment, of nature and nurture. Nature means genes, it's just like a synonym. Nurture means the environment. Nurture actually means to to raise something, to bring a child up, for example, you nurture the child. So because these two are such similar words, they developed this phrase which means genes versus the environment. So it's a pretty fundamental idea in the whole passage, is this whole genes versus environment, nature versus nurture argument. Twins are at greater risk of developing certain illnesses than non-twins. So we're looking for illnesses. And it's actually a very difficult paraphrase. It's there, actually it's there as well. So that's the illness, but this also means illness. So what are they saying? If the twins are similar to each other with respect to illnesses, then vulnerability to the disease must be because of heredity. Difficult to understand, that sentence. But what are we looking for? We're just looking for target language. And this is a good example of how important it is to just isolate the target language, and you can ignore everything else. You don't really need to understand that sentence. Who's at greater risk than non-twins? We don't know who's at greater risk. Actually, I don't see them mentioning non-twins anyway. Identical twins, fraternal twins, I don't see them mentioning non-twins. Anyway, we don't know who is at greater risk. They're just talking about whether it's from genes or whether it's from the environment. We don't know who's at greater risk. So that's not given. Look, these are tough. These are really tough. They're kind of a reading too true, false, not given this. Bouchard advertised in newspapers. This is just scanning for newspapers. Bouchard is here. They don't really introduce him well, but that's the first time they mention Bouchard. And now you've got to scan for newspapers. But I don't see newspapers. It's just nowhere. So that must be not given. I don't see anything about newspapers. Again, you see it's quite common. When it's difficult to isolate the target language, often that's not given. So it's a good guess if you have to guess. Are they different or the same to these processes? This was very difficult. Here we talk about the processes. This is genetic, this is environmental. And these processes are tied to neither one. But they are actually a third component. So that word tied to, in this case it means connected to. But this says that they are not tied to either one of these. They are separate, and that means they are different from those two. But anyway, we know that because if you've got false, not given, then this must be true. All right. I had to rush through that a little bit, but I think it was pretty tough. Difficult language. Right, let's move on to this last section. I'm going to go quite quickly through this because there are actually a couple of mistakes in this and things that I don't agree with. So if you got confused here, don't worry. I'll show you where IELTS have not done a good job. It's very unlike them. Usually these Cambridge books are very reliable, but there's a couple of mistakes here which I'll show you. Anyway, the first two are straightforward. First of all, that might confuse you. It says match the statement, but it's not something that these people said that you're looking for. If you look at these statements, it's about them. It's not by them. It's actually something that they did. All of these are verbs that they did. So you're not going to look for what they said. It could be anything about them, not something that was said that they said. So that makes it again a little bit more difficult. Of course, you're going to scan for this. You're not going to scan for this. This is the paraphrase. We can go to that one because there's very little about him. Only that bit is about him. And coin the phrase is what we're looking here. To coin a phrase means to invent or create a new phrase. So that one was pretty straightforward because we see it invented a new term to distinguish the two factors, the nature and nurture. So that one I'm pretty happy if we go with A. The rest of it, you just need to be clear on what you should read. You should read that. ignore that, ignore all of this, and then read this again. So it's these 5 paragraphs that you really need to read. And it's not like the other times when they say only focus on what they said, then you can focus in on that sort of thing. But these, unfortunately, you need to read the whole thing. So, express the view that the study of epigenetics will increase our knowledge. This is the only one, the person where we have something where she is saying something, where she is expressing the view. And if you read it, you will see that we're able to look at DNA, see where the pencil writings are. It's a whole new world, and that means that epigenetics increases our knowledge. It's a whole new world for us to explore. All right, I'm just showing you where they are because I want to show you where the problems are. All right, these two are fine, no problem there. Now we start running into problems. Can you find anything about a mathematical method? Yes, there is statistical. IELTS often uses statistical and mathematical as synonyms. Technically they aren't really, but they're close enough. So, okay, we can say Bouchard for that, even though the problem I have with this is this statement. Where are we? This statement says they developed this mathematical method. But here it doesn't say that they developed the method. It just says that they had this method, the statistical approach. I can't see anything else about mathematics. So reluctantly, I will go for B there, because I don't see any other mathematical method. Tell me in the comments if you do. Then, this is a problem because there's 2 possible answers. Pioneered the research into genetics using twins. So, pioneered means to be the first person to do it. It could be this one, this guy, because he first suggested the approach of using twins to measure the influence of heredity. So, he was the pioneer. But then, this lady over here said that Bouchard was the trailblazer, and trailblazer means pioneer. So really, I'm confused. Who's the pioneer? I would probably say Bouchard because he did the research. But in the book, here are the answers. IELTS says that it's A. And it says that it's A for number 9 as well. Okay, so that means I would have gotten this one wrong, because I would have said B, because he's the one that did all the work. This guy just suggested it. Bouchard actually did it. And anyway, this woman says he was the trailblazer. He was the pioneer. Bouchard. So it's very confusing, and IELTS shouldn't confuse us like that. So anyway, okay, I would have gotten that one wrong. IELTS says it's A. But then they say, carried out research into twins who had lived apart, and the book says that that is also A. But that's not A. That is definitely B, because he carried out the research. There's nothing here saying that this guy carried out the research. This guy, he carried out the research. Numerous tests were carried out. Studies into identical twins who had been separated at birth. Bouchard did it. So this one, IELTS says that it's A, but it is definitely B. And then this one I disagree with. I think that's B as well. So, actually just forget about this whole thing. IELTS messed it up, which is very unlike them. I'm very surprised, but this was just too confusing. And it's reading 1. It's crazy for them to do that. So don't let it discourage you. Just forget about it. Let's move on to the next reading.